once it's done, but we are going to jump right into it quickly. Guys, we are getting into the podcast. Oh, just had a notification come through, but we'll get to that later. 20K_Ox got my first kickboxing match next year. My only piece of advice there, keep training, dude. You got a long time. You're good. Keep training. Wow. Okay. So guys, we're going to jump into it quickly. We are talking about training injured. We're going to go in 3, 2, 1. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the #1 show for athletes looking to gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. I am your host, Kenny Dusseault, and today we are talking about training injured. Now, the reason we're talking about this is because I see two very differing schools of thought from athletes in terms of training injured, in terms of how to get more out of their training, in terms of what to do when you are hurt. So the first one is basically just ignore it. And I know that probably sounds stupid to a lot of people listening, and that's because it is kind of stupid. If you're injured, you should not be ignoring it. But basically the mindset that I see a lot of athletes take is, well, I'm injured, but I have a fight coming up or whatever it is, so I'm just going to train through it. And see, the problem when you just decide to train through it, especially depending on the severity, like, don't get me wrong, I understand bumps and bruises are going to happen. You're fighting, you're training hard. That is what it is. But when it comes to actual injuries, a like torn muscle, a dislocated joint of some sort, whatever else it might be, if you just ignore it and try to train through it, you've got to remember what the goal of training actually is. And the goal of training is to win when you compete. Is that correct? I would assume everybody would agree with that. And if you are training with a dislocated shoulder, as an example, and thinking, I'm just going to keep training through it, I'm going to be fine, think about what you're doing. In your head, you're like, well, I'm going to prepare the best I can. I'm going to do all my rounds. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that, blah, blah, blah. But what you're actually doing is you're going into a fight with an enormous disadvantage because you're not taking proper care of the thing that's injured, right? And shoulder just came to an example because, we see a lot of shoulder injuries when it comes to training and everything like that. So we want to make sure that, when you're training, when you get hurt, these kind of things will happen, but you need to actually take care of it, because if you just train through it, you just keep trying to do more, then you're just going to end up making that joint or that injury or whatever it might be worse. And if you start making that joint or that injury, whatever it is, worse, what starts to happen is now you're coming into a fight with a massive disadvantage, which is going to take away from the ultimate goal of training, which is to win when you compete. So the other problem that I see, or the other school of thought I see that I have an issue with when it comes to training injured, plain and simple, is just stepping out of training. So what I'll see a lot of athletes do is, they're training away, they're doing their thing, they get hurt, and then they just say, well, I can't train now because I'm hurt. But the thing is, even then, let's say you have 6 weeks left till your fight, you injure something, and then you decide, okay, I'm not going to train until it's better. Now you go 2, 3, 4 weeks without training. What's going to happen? You're going to be 2, 3, 4 weeks behind in your training. You're not going to have the results that you're looking for because you're not doing the work that's required to prepare for the fight. So how do we go about balancing this? And this is the real question. So the rule that I always stick to when it comes to athletes training injured, the rule I always stick to, the rule I always work with my athletes, is using pain as a guideline. So as an example, with that dislocated shoulder, if you dislocated a shoulder, then what you need to figure out is what you can still do. So the first thing I'll always have athletes do is figure out, with whatever injury it is, what can I still do? What movements can I do that do not affect the injured area? So as an example, a shoulder is a tough one because there's a lot of stuff, even for lower body, that you're holding weights. So that's going to be a tough part on the shoulder. But what can I do that is going to allow me to push myself while not putting more impact, trouble finding my words today, on that injured area? So an example with a shoulder there's going to be some very basic mobility and stability exercises that you might be able to do still without causing extra pain to that shoulder. You're going to be able to do conditioning work on a bike. You're going to be able to do a lot of different stuff outside of just putting impact through that shoulder, right? So instead of just training as normal and making the shoulder worse, now you figure out, what can I still do? What can I not do anymore? And then you create a new plan around the things that you can do. Because is it ideal? Of course not. Ideally, you're able to do everything and there's nothing that's holding you back. But if something's holding you back, now you figure out, how far along that line can I push without causing pain to that injured area? Because if you can still do your conditioning work and you can still do some lower body exercises, you can still do some of the basics in preparation for your competition, then now what's going to start happening is, when the shoulder is actually healed and when you're ready to put it through 100% again, you're starting from 80% instead of starting from 0%. So you're going to heal your injury faster because you're not continuing to train on it like it's normal when it's not, but you're going to be able to keep yourself fit so that you're not starting from square one when you come back. And the same idea on the other side of it, when you just train like normal, the biggest problem that happens there is you might feel like you're keeping yourself fit. You might feel like you're doing everything you can do, but if you're never improving the site of the injury, you're never working on actually healing the shoulder and you're just trying to use it like it's normal, then the problem with that is the shoulder's never going to heal because you're never doing the work required to actually heal it. So the big thing I need you guys to understand when it comes to training injured, the biggest thing I need you guys to understand is that it's about the number one goal of training always. And the number one goal of training is to succeed when you compete. And if the goal of training is to succeed when you compete, what needs to be done to give yourself the best chance of being successful? What needs to be done is going to change drastically in times that you're healthy and times that you're not. Because if you're healthy, nothing's holding you back. What needs to be done is going to be your full training program, all your skill work, every piece of everything, all across the board. The second you get injured, let's say it's your right shoulder and you're an orthodox fighter, you can't throw your right hand. Then if you just keep going and keep sparring normally, throwing your right hand, doing all of these things, and that shoulder just gets worse and worse and worse, now you're going into the fight with a severely compromised right arm and you're not able to throw any power shots. You're not doing the work required to help you be the most successful you can be in competition. Does that make sense? So guys, very simply, you need to use pain as a guideline. You need to figure out what movements you can still actually do, and then recreate the plan around how much you can train or what kind of training you can do that's going to lead you to being successful, or as close to being successful as you can within the actual night of the fight itself. So guys, I hope you got some value from that. I hope you learned something. I hope you took something away. If you did, I would love to know what it is. Make sure to shoot me a comment shoot me a message on any of my social media platforms and let me know what you were able to take away. Let me know what you learned. And as always, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will catch you on the next episode.